1:30 and I'm going to get started. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Councilmember Pam Foley, and this is the Community and Economic Development Committee. And we are operating hybrid today. So I'm in chambers. Some of my colleagues are online, and staff is here to present in person. Before I begin, I would like to read the Code of Conduct, which is to remind everybody that, which includes the committee, members of the public, to follow our code of conduct at these meetings. This includes commenting on the specific agenda item only and addressing the full body. Public speakers will not engage in a conversation with the chair or council members or staff. All members of the committee, staff, and the public are expected to refrain from abusive language. Repeated failure to comply with the Code of Conduct, which will disturb, disrupt, or impede the orderly conduct of this meeting, may result in removal from the meeting. This meeting of the CED will now come to order. Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Carrasco? Morales?
Here.
Mahan?
Here.
Esparza?
Here.
And Foley?
Here.
Thank you.
Okay, so bear with me a little bit as we're going to go through the agenda, but I have council members who are online, so when it's time, they will raise their virtual hand, and I'll try to recognize when they have raised their hands. If not, I have staff here to help me with that, and same thing with public comments. The first item we have is we don't have nothing to review on the work plan, so we're going to move on to the consent calendar. Is there, since this is just consent, we will take public comment and then approve it unless the council committee would like to discuss it. So are there any members of the public who would like to comment on the Housing Community Development Work Plan?
There are no hands up.
Okay, great. With that, I'll entertain a motion to accept the consent calendar.
So moved.
Second. Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Great. Let's vote.
Morales?
Yes.
Mahan?
Aye.
Esparza?
Yes.
Foley?
Aye.
Thank you.
Great, thank you. All right, next item is the Economic Development Activities Quarterly Report. Elizabeth.
Thank you, Chair Foley and members of the committee. I'm Elizabeth Handler, the Public Information Manager for the Office of Economic Development and Cultural Affairs. And I'm pleased to present you with the report of activities. It includes blog posts, it includes events, news releases over the past quarter. I'm going to start off with a recap of something that you're very familiar with because we presented it to you, and it's not advancing here. Oh, there it is. It is taking longer. I was warned. The downtown report that you received last month, which in general had a sobering assessment of the recovery in downtown San Jose, very hard hit by the reduction in workforce reporting to work every day downtown. But there are some development and investment reports that we derive some comfort from, including the much improved intersection at First and East Santa Clara, West Santa Clara, and the really heartening developments that are taking place, the real construction that's happening now in downtown. The small business grants program was application for deadlines was to deadline for applications was extended to the end of June, and we are at this point sorting through all the applications that were received, and because it was based on a lottery system, going through every application in terms of its eligibility and working out if there will be another round if there's funds left over. The Cornerstone of the Arts Awardees for this year were announced. There'll be a wonderful event in October to honor them, but they were announced, and Chike Nufoya, who's a very well-known advocate and practitioner of the arts, received the major Cornerstone Award, along with San Jose Rotary and Mosaic America. The next item will be coming up shortly. I've got to get my trigger finger working better on this. The Innovation Award was given to the City of San Jose this year by the San Jose Chamber of Commerce, and it was specifically for the alfresco program. And Blage Zelalic accepted on behalf of the city, but made a very strong point of noting that all in all, 10 departments of the city were involved in making alfresco possible, including the city attorney's office, I have to acknowledge here. But there were many, many hands across many departments who made that possible. We're pleased to see that San Jose is getting its share of national media attention. There was a story in the Wall Street Journal that traced the recovery in San Jose as a city, which has been significant, and compared it to the review that they had done a couple of years ago, showing that actually San Francisco's downtown had taken a terrible hit and was still not recovering fully. The Wired piece was a kind of a deep dive into some of the legal challenges of assembling as large a piece of property as being used for Downtown West, and dealing with the fact that property barriers and boundaries were very different back in the 1800s. So that was kind of an interesting look at that side of the story. This is a story that there may be differing opinions about how seriously to take a survey that is put out by a commercial real estate group, but it does show that the media who pay attention to these kinds of surveys are getting messages about San Jose being highly attractive for millennials and having actually improved its attractivity rating for millennials over the past few years. So we don't take it all that seriously, but this is the kind of thing that does get covered in the media, so it's nice to take note of. We also wanted to make sure we pointed out that the San Jose Downtown Association has a new CEO, Alex Statinski, and we ran a guest blog post from them with a Q&A with Alex, which is kind of interesting, showing kind of his take on how he's going to look at helping downtown build back. City Dance, as you know, is back, and so we have actually one more coming up in September, which is K-pop, which is a not-to-miss event, and I encourage everyone to turn out for that. We've had 4 good events this year. We had a delegation of 40 telecommunications executives from Taiwan visited San Jose as part of their U.S. commercial tour, and they were hosted here by our our international programs manager, Joe Hedges. And then finally, we had a guest blog post from Clean Energy, advice on how to manage any past due electricity bills that you might have if you're a business, and what PGE is doing to help those folks get caught up and get fully paid up. And that was a good blog post that was done in 4 languages too, so we provided links to all 4 of those. So be happy to take any questions. Thank you very much.
Wonderful, thank you. Are there any members of the public with their hands raised who'd like to speak on this issue?
There are currently no hands up.
Okay, then I'll move to the committee. Any committee members?
There are currently no council members with their hands up
Okay,
online.
then I just have a couple of comments, or one comment really, and that's about the Office of Cultural Affairs Awards that the Arts Commission hands out, and specifically regarding the Rotary Award. As a member of the Rotary Club, I'm very proud of this. This is for the Lee Weimer's Emerging Artists Program, where the Rotary Club has been awarding a stipend to emerging artists, 3 to 5 people each year. They give them a showcase for them to come into the Rotary meetings, and then they present them with a check to help them with their expenses and to sometimes rent. So it's been a very effective program. For those of you who know Lee Weimers, he was very much a supporter of the arts, and so Rotary has funded this program in his name many years ago. So I just wanted to shout that out a little bit. And the millennials, I have a millennial daughter. I'm not sure she would agree with you on that, or some of the millennial friends I have. They may not say we're there yet, but we're getting there. So that's good. Thank you very much. With that, is there a motion to accept the report?
Move to accept.
Thank you. Thank you. Is there, and I think I heard a second. So let's vote then, Grace, or Yasmin. Thank you.
Carrasco? Perales?
Yes.
Mahan? Esparza?
Yes.
Foley?
Aye.
Thank you.
Okay. Next item is the City Initiatives Roadmap, Development Service Process Improvements, and Dashboard Status Report. And I believe we have Chris Burton and Lisa Joyner joining us. Welcome. It's so funny. I have to just say this. It's funny to sit on this side and be running this meeting. I feel like...
Doing a fabulous job. And it's quite nice not to have to turn so much.
I know,
this way.
right?
It's
Sideways, because I'm... Really, my view is not that good from that side. Much better from this seat.
Oh,
I'll promise not to use the gavel on you.
that's okay.
That is sitting right here.
Feel free to stop us at any time.
Thank you.
Oh. That's problematic. Our apologies. Let me get going just while we get that on the screen. So thank you, Chair Foley, members of the committee, Chris Burton, Director of Planning, Building, Code Enforcement. I'm joined today by Lisa Joyner, a Deputy Director for the Building Division. And we're here to give you our latest update on the work we're doing to improve our processes, identify bottlenecks, and support the work of PBCE with our customers and the public. So as we've talked about previously, we have a number of measures that we're tracking, and if you just give me a moment, we'll have them on the screen for you. This is likely the last time in our sort of biannual review that you'll see the measures in this form. So we're currently underway on revising all of our performance measures. We've actually been using this process to refine our approach and our sort of look into how we measure our customer service performance. So we can do a better job of providing transparency into how the department's operating. As you'll see in just a moment, we often have our eye test slide, which is all 18 measures in one place, just so you can kind of see the trend lines and what's going on. I'm going to identify a couple of these that we just want to point out and highlight some successes in recently. And then we're actually going to talk a little bit more specifically around a couple of processes within the building department. And we're going to do that to sort of illustrate how we're thinking about this work and how we're approaching it. So in a very, very practical way, so you can understand what that means ultimately for the customer. Before we move off of this slide, the two things I really want to identify. One, just you'll see a decline on chart number 5 under Issuance and Inspections. That's total applications completed within our planning group. And it's always worrying to see a drop-off like that. It's not sort of a coming apocalypse in the economy. It's actually to do more with seasonal changes. So we often see, obviously, projects aren't coming to council during July. We're dealing with vacations both on the staff side, both on the applicant side. So we typically see seasonally a slowdown in this time. So that's why you're seeing that sort of sharp decline there. The other sharp decline, which is actually a really good success story, is in chart number 2 related to email inquiries. So we know through the pandemic, the shift in our customer service delivery model has been challenging. We've had to use tools like email to respond to questions that would typically come in through the first floor counter, especially in our planning group. And as a result, email's always on. People can email us 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And it meant that the volume increased significantly throughout the last 2 years. We've been sitting at a pretty steady backlog of about 1,000 emails unanswered, certainly for the last 12 plus months that I've been in the job. And we've been working on a number of different levels to really address that and think how we can do a better job of making sure that our customers can ask questions and receive answers in a timely manner. So we've made some changes within our Planning Development Services group. We've actually appointed John Tu as a division manager, an acting division manager currently, who's overseeing the project review component. And that's allowed us to free up Sylvia Doe, who we've moved down as a division manager over our public information counter and our planning services on the first floor. And as you can see from that sharp decline in chart number 2, we've gone down from over 1,000 emails backlog to being able to respond to those customer inquiries within 2 to 3 days. So it's been a massive improvement. We're continuing to do that work to look at how we can provide better delivery. So that team also provides support to the building division as far as conformance review between planning and building. They also do certain application intakes. So we're continuing to refine those processes, but just wanted to highlight that as an early win as well. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Lisa to talk through the first of our kind of 2 processes, just to highlight how we sort of combine that knowledge around how we're doing from a customer service perspective with the sort of practical reality that we see from a customer standpoint.
That's the go button.
Big green.
Good afternoon, Chair Foley, council members. Lisa Joyner, Deputy Director of the Building Division. So for an example of how our operations impact our measures, we were going to use an example of the building process for the ADU process. And just a note that while we're using ADUs as our example, the measures that you saw on the previous slide are not focused on ADUs, they're building permits as a whole. So the first step is project scoping. What can I do what I want to do? Then followed by preparing and submitting your application package, plan review, and then on to construction and inspection. So ADUs are a major construction project that many homeowners try to attempt on their own. It seems simple on its face. It's just a little ADU in my backyard. But in reality, it's a second house on a lot that already has a house. This requires a bit of forethought and planning that the average homeowner or designer is not always aware of. So what are the challenges and how do we mitigate them? So some challenges are inexperienced applicants. ADU applicants vary and include homeowners, where this may be their one and only ever construction project, and inexperienced builders. And these inexperienced customers don't find the right information and start designing without knowing potential pitfalls of their designs. This makes early stage, almost pre-design support necessary to ensure the project can proceed smoothly, which in turn increases email and phone inquiries to our staff. So what have we done? We have an entire section of the website dedicated to ADUs, and resourceful customers are able to find answers and guidance to starting their ADU projects. We also have our very important ADU ally. This ally answers customer questions, guides them to resources, and helps build the pipeline of applications. So step 2, preparing and submitting your application. Developing plans for ADUs are the core of the permit issuance process. Complete quality plans submitted is key to process and project success. If plans submitted are missing key information or entire elements of the package are missing, additional submittal appointments are required. So the big challenge is getting quality plans. The high cost for building ADUs leads customers to often opt for low bid professionals or to take a DIY approach to develop plans, which often result in incomplete submittals. If the plans or packages are not complete, again, additional submittal appointments are required. So we have a pre-approved program. Standard plan documents ensure quality plans are submitted and approved quickly and easily, thus reducing the need for additional appointments. We currently have 15 ADU vendors and over 25 pre-approved construction documents ready for customers to use. We also have dedicated intake staff. This staff help customers with their submittals, and they know how to address common issues in the submittal process that allows them to complete the intakes quickly and efficiently. And then plan review. After the application package is successfully submitted, plans are reviewed by the plan review engineer for conformance to building safety codes. So much like the last slide, the pre-approved or master file program makes a big difference in reducing plan review workload. This program increases the plan review on-time metric and reduces plan review backlog. So challenges with plan review, again, are the technical resources on our website that guide customers how to create their plans. And if the customers don't reference these, they start off on the wrong foot, missing critical information. More rounds of review contribute to the overall backlog in the plan review process. While submittals are generally easier to review, resubmittals, it takes time that could be used to start reviewing another ADU project. And as we said on the last slide, we do have dedicated intake staff to help the customers get in, but what that has the result of is it increases the number of plans that move into the plan review process, thus creating the backlog. And our final step, construction and inspection. So after the permit issuance, construction can begin, and inspections take place along the process. So improvements, our team has created and published an inspection checklist specifically for ADUs. With a new house, you're creating all of your plumbing and electrical connections pretty much from scratch on the site. With an ADU, you're tying into an existing system. This checklist ensures the design professionals or contractors think through these elements prior to the start of construction to reduce costly changes and redesigns in the field, and therefore the need for re-inspections. And we also have pre-field site inspections. So field coordinators are able to meet with the contractors before construction or inspection starts to help guide them through the process to ensure they're successful. This helps customers to plan ahead and be prepared for each inspection. And of course, the challenges with inspection are applicants being unprepared. Often when inspectors show up to a site, the customer is unprepared with their plans or permit card, and sorting that out takes away from the actual inspection time. Sometimes the contractor has underestimated the time needed to be ready for the inspection, which often requires the inspection to be rescheduled, adding to the total number of inspections required. And lastly, not planning ahead. Contractors that are able to schedule an inspection days or even weeks ahead of time are able to find an inspection that fits their construction schedule. Those who wait until the last minute and can't find an available inspector immediately can cause project delays.
Great, thanks, Lisa. So we're just going to stay with inspection for a moment and just drill down a little bit more, because I think the inspection process is just a really important one to understand. It's where we see our customers the most, just given the sheer volume of inspection and every project that comes through, whether or not it goes through plan review, whether it's sort of self-issued online, is going to come into a contact with one of our building inspectors. So it's often one of those points at which we see challenges, certainly when we're sort of balancing the load between major projects that are moving through and are following a very strict construction schedule to stay on time, as well as a huge volume of single-family homeowners or small projects that need inspection on a sort of a regular basis. And when they call, they think inspection should be available as soon as possible. You know, they don't want to hold their project up. So obviously, you know, what does inspection look like? So just looking at the flow on the right, so our customers have access to either on phone or online scheduling of inspections. When that comes through, our managers are working with the supervisors and the teams to assign those inspections throughout the day. so that the inspector sort of has that schedule. Now, it's a balance between what they get. It could be a series of small projects. So in inspection, one count is one inspection. So if you're calling for your water heater, that's what we call a single count. If they're going to a large site, so a multifamily site, a commercial site, there may be several counts. So they may be inspecting multiple different things as they're there. There could be 4 to 6 counts on a single project. There could be 9 within any sort of block. So typically what we see for our inspectors during a day is each one's doing roughly 13 inspections a day, there or thereabout, or 13 counts a day. Now, obviously, if they're moving around the city a considerable amount, there's an inefficiency there. So we try and schedule things together. We try and look geographically and put those things close together to make up the time. So our inspector goes out, they call their on-site contact, they make the field inspection, they walk through with the customer, they complete the inspection notice, and then that's uploaded into SJ Permit. So it's a seamless process that should sort of work and should be accessible to our customers at all times. The challenge we found, obviously, in the last 12 months and going back even more, is that our schedule, our number of counts is down on our year-over-year average. And while there's sort of certainly less construction activity occurring as a result of COVID, it's actually more to do with the impact that we're seeing from vacancies within our inspection division. And the challenge with our inspectors, with hiring inspectors, is that we hire truly advanced professionals who really understand the construction process, can go out there, can make determinations, can work with applicants and talk them through what their challenges are. And it's really hard to find those people right now. So as you can see at the bottom of that slide, we have a number of vacancies both at the inspector and the supervisor level. So we're totally budgeted positions for inspectors is 63 positions. So they're managing construction projects throughout the city, working with construction projects throughout the city. We have 13 vacancies that represents a roughly 20% vacancy rate right there. Of that number, we have 42 that are actually in the field. We have a number that are working in City Hall with applicants with our plan review process. And then similarly, you can see that we've got a 26% vacancy rate in our supervisors positions. We are looking at opportunities to obviously move people up and advance them into supervisor roles. The challenge there, obviously, is that it creates a hole when we do that, and that's additional positions that we'll have to fill. The other thing I just want to highlight on inspections when we talk about that balance between large projects and the small individual homeowners is we actually work with our major projects in advance. We allow them to sort of give us their construction schedule so that we can get them on the books and understand sort of where they're going to be and almost sort of pre-book their inspections. What that means is it's about 40% of our capacity is dedicated to major projects at any given time. So we're already starting with sort of diminished capacity for those people that call and want that inspection within 48 hours. So as you saw on the previous slide, our goal is to be out there in 48 hours roughly. We're working to refine that metric. It doesn't account for that 40% as well as it should. But actually the team have done an amazing job in kind of bringing that forward. So we're going to continue to work at that and look for those opportunities to provide better service to our customers and ensure that they can get inspections at a timely basis. The last thing, sorry, just before I move on to this slide that I wanted to talk about, one of the sort of other improvements that we're looking at is how do we think about the sort of best prepared opportunity? Because the challenge with inspections is if we have to go out and do multiple inspections on a single site, there's obviously an inefficiency there. We want our customers to get that right the first time. So as Lisa said, we're doing a lot more work up front to try and see where we can make those gains and those improvements. So I'm going to end just looking at the department as a whole, well, the development review portions of the department as a whole. This doesn't include code enforcement. So as you can see, vacancy remains a challenge, and when you're in the service delivery business, that's always going to be the hardest part. We have seen an uptick across the board since the last time we presented. However, there's a caveat in there, which is that obviously all those positions that were budgeted in the budget that was approved at the end of July have now hit the books. So we're out there looking to fill those positions, which is why you see those numbers increasing. Certainly, when we look at that permit center number, that's alarming, but that's 5 new positions in there that we're looking to hire. But we're out there hiring as our sort of number one priority within the department. We're meeting on a weekly basis to understand what our next steps are. I think we currently have 16 active recruitments for 68 positions throughout the department right now that we're currently working on. And so that's the sort of update on where we're at from a hiring perspective. And I believe that's everything. Yeah, so Lisa and I will be available for questions.
Thank you so much for that presentation, Lisa and Chris. A lot of really good information. Going to turn to the members of the public. Do we have any speakers with their hands raised?
We don't have any hands up.
Okay, then I will move to my council colleagues, and I see that Councilmember Mahan has his hand raised. Councilmember Mahan, welcome.
Thanks, Sarah, and Chris and Lisa. Thanks for the detailed presentation. Really great to see. Just a couple of reflections and maybe a question or two on just going back to the metrics. I think it's great to have the dashboards and to see that you all are tracking and reporting regularly on performance. I think that's a really good practice. I think in the presentation, what might be helpful, or at least personally, what I would want to know is you've got all these kind of internal metrics for performance, but up-leveling from our perspective, knowing which ones are priority. What you did say what your top goal was there at the end, which I totally agree with and I think is important, but helping us understand, hey, we're tracking all of these different metrics that they're probably all important to different people within your org, but as a department, what's kind of priority 1, 2, 3? What are we, what are our change initiatives? Where are we really focusing in to hit a growth goal or an improvement goal, or however you want to think about that? I think would be helpful to call that out. I was going to note that of the pretty comprehensive dashboards you have, it seems like the most important goal we have right now within the department is staffing, and that was not one of the performance metrics. So I just wanted to call out, it's great to track our performance and have dashboards and all, but I think it's more important to manage around goals and then track what we're doing to get to the goal. So yeah, of those, I think it was 18 metrics. In addition to staffing, what right now is in the critical path? I mean, what is, if you were going to elevate a couple of things for improving the overall impact of the department for our community, what would you, obviously filling vacancies, I think you said is number one, which makes a ton of sense given the high vacancy rate. Are there another one or two that jump out as like, this is what we really need to get right to move the needle?
Yeah, thanks for the question, Councilmember Mahan. I think it is an important point. It's one that we're focused on. So I think, if I remember rightly, we're at about sort of 6 or 7 months into this process. This is the second or third time I think we've been to committee on this topic. And what we did initially was to pull the dashboard of all the data that we had available that we could track over a period of time, which is how we ended up with these 18. They're not necessarily the 18 we would have started out to design. It's sort of what's the best data we have available right now, and how do we sort of relate that to our work. We have been undergoing a fairly significant customer service focus process inside the department, and it's really addressing the issue from a customer-centric perspective. So what are the things that matter most to our customers? How do we measure them? And then once we measure them, how do we sort of ensure that our managers and supervisors are taking note of those measures, looking for insights from them, and then making informed decisions on how we can change our service delivery model. So what I would say, the sort of focus, when you shift that, and this is what I hope to have for you in 6 months' time when we're back again with the next version of this report, is really those measures that make a difference on sort of customer service. So responsiveness across the board, whether it's ability to get an intake appointment so you can submit your application, whether it's the ability to get a response via email through one of our inquiry portals, or the time it takes within that process. That's where you'll see the focus. That's what we're sort of driving towards. How do we ensure that our process is working with our applicants to make it less burdensome, to be really focused on their outcomes? And the number one resource we need to do that is the staff within the department.
Well, great. I look forward to seeing that in 6 because that is what I'm asking is, it's great to track a bunch of things. And I think that's really important internally for knowing how we're doing and identifying levers we can pull to get better. But what I'm more interested in is what are the strategic goals, what are the goals we have? And I think they should absolutely reflect what the ultimately the outcomes that the customer care, our residents care about, obviously. Do we, along those lines, and I think you started to highlight what some of those are. When I hear feedback from constituents about their experience with the department, it tends to be around the length of time to get an intake meeting, or just the general kind of the responsiveness and length of time. And I appreciate that you pointed out some places where we've been improving there. I've also, obviously we hear from the folks who are dissatisfied. So I don't mean to be just focusing on the negative here, but I do, as a trend, hear a bit about consistency of the feedback people get from inspectors. And I'm just curious, do we have a standard way for every person who touches one of our permitting processes, a standard way for them to give us a customer satisfaction kind of a rating plus more free-form feedback on what they did and didn't like about the process?
Yeah, thanks, Councilmember. We actually used to have a pretty comprehensive survey that used to go out to all of our customers on an annual basis. It did drop off during COVID. It's one of the things that we're looking at as an opportunity to sort of bring back. How do we get that direct feedback from customers to ensure that any change to process or procedure that's being undertaken is having a positive impact on that sentiment across the board? So it's one that we understand that right now we have a gap on that.
Well, I would like to just advocate for us absolutely trying to bring back that customer feedback system. And then I'll also just put in my 2 cents that I think there's a real value of recency. I certainly found that when running customer service teams. I think sending someone, probably digitally, the feedback form immediately as they are wrapping up their experience, you're going to get a higher response rate and probably more details, more specifics than if we wait to kind of do it on our schedule, our own time frame. So I think some kind of almost automated, hey, you're at the last step in the process, let's also ask you how it went. There's a lot of scoring systems out there like Net Promoter Score and other methods of kind of standardizing that. But I just think it's important that we're really moving in a very customer-centric direction and elevating of all these great metrics that I'm sure are all very relevant internally, like which ones really matter the most, and then where are we gonna hold ourselves accountable for demonstrating that we can improve. So that was just my primary point of feedback, but really appreciate the granularity of the data and the deeper dive on ADUs and some of the other stuff, and the emphasis on hiring, which is obviously priority number 1, and wish you all great luck as you fill those roles, hopefully quickly. Thank you. Oh, and I will, sorry, Chair, I'll move acceptance of the report.
Wonderful, thank you. Is there a second? Great. And your baby seconds it too. That's great. Okay, Councilmember Perales, you're next.
I was just going to pick up on that topic of staffing and kind of wanted to hear, what does that plan of action look like? What are the hurdles there? Are we talking about, salary? Are we seeing people? Is it difficult to recruit because of cost of living? Like what? I'm just kind of curious. Is this something that other cities are just kind of challenging right now as well in this overall environment? I'm just kind of curious on that and what the plan is to try and address the staffing needs.
Yeah, thanks for the question, Councilmember. Obviously, it's something that we're taking a much deeper dive on a pretty regular basis. It varies across the board. I think, when we look at the experience that we're having in one part of the department, it may differ to another part, just given the different nature of the work that we see. So, for example, we generally get a really good response rate on planning applications, right? So planner 1, 2, 3, we see a lot of interest in those positions. We've seen a considerable amount of turnover over the last 2 years because that's one of those areas where, we've repeatedly heard feedback from employees that are exiting the department after they've been in for a period of time that it's an expensive place to live. They're trying to grow a family. They're looking for opportunities. So certainly it's something that's top of mind. In other parts of the department, and I'm sure Lisa can speak to it as well, it's just challenges finding the applicants. Certainly on what I'd say the two areas would be the senior engineers for plan check, which has been a real challenge trying to find the right people with the right level of experience that can come into San Jose and deal with the types of projects that we have to deal with that they may not see in other parts of the South Bay. And then, as we said, inspectors have been challenging. Now, we have had some success on the inspection front. And so it'd be interesting to see. I think we have 13 applicants that are moving through the process right now for inspection. So we're really positive they're moving to the practical test, I think this coming weekend. Is that right? Yep. And then we've seen a number of other successes. It's something that we're sort of mindful of. So there's the near-term issue. We have vacancies. We have to fill them. There's a longer-term question of how we will continue to fill these vacancies in the future, just given the change in the nature of work, the high cost of living, the sort of shift in demographics. So across the board throughout the department, we're sort of taking an approach of really trying to be thoughtful, really looking to the future while still kind of, fighting to fill those holes. I'm going to hand it to Lisa for a sec. She can certainly talk about the experience of other cities, certainly in the building side.
Thank you, Chris. All of the feedback that I've heard through our local International Code Council chapters and through CALBO and ICC conferences is everybody is having the same challenge, finding and retaining staff. So it's not anything that's specific to San Jose, but across the board in this profession. It's just having a very difficult time. Thank you.
Councilmember Perales, anything else?
No, yeah, thank you for the answer there. I think it's unfortunate, right? It's disheartening because it doesn't look like there is a immediate solution to this. I mean, I think it's going to take a level of investment and creativity along the lines of, do we have something better to offer city employees here when it comes to housing needs, right, or assistance, right? How competitive can we be, right, in certain areas of high need, right, to retain or attract the right employees? It's just, anyways, I think, it's unfortunate because it seems like this is going to be a challenge that's going to persist, and it's the biggest challenge we have in achieving any of our goals because we need the staff to do it, and otherwise the delays will be there, right? The workload and overworked nature of these roles will be there, and so I think certainly I see this as the number one priority because without it, right, without getting these people in, we're not going to be able to achieve it. So thanks for the answer.
Great, thank you. All good questions from my colleagues, and I just want to follow up on a couple of them. So regarding the building inspections, is that where the biggest pain point is or bottleneck with our customer satisfaction or getting the project done? Where is the biggest pain point with moving projects forward?
Yeah, Councilmember, I'd say it's probably across the board. I actually think our inspection team are doing a phenomenal job. We've seen a sort of an increase in the delay to inspection over the last few months and generally Chu and Lisa will often tell me that it's Father's Day. As soon as you hit Father's Day, inspections increase. I can't tell you what that correlation is, but there's definitely one there.
DIY projects for Dad.
Must be, right? Everybody gets new
It's your
tools.
day off, but
Yep,
we want you to do
it.
this. Yeah.
So anyway, so we see that increase, and so we did see sort of our backlog increase within inspection, but it's still within a reasonably good time frame. And as I said, we've been making some gains there. And our two division managers in the inspection team do a phenomenal job of making sure that they're utilizing the resources they have on a regular basis. what I would say is where we see probably the biggest challenges right now have been in that sort of that delay. So, I want to submit my permit. What's the earliest you can get me in? And again, because of the way that we had to restructure around service delivery through COVID, it really created this opportunity for backlog that we've been fighting ever since. And then through plan check, really the challenge has been that more volume has come through plan check as a result of that. So rather than us dealing with things at the counter, the first floor counter is an incredibly efficient way of delivering service for building permits. And when we lost that through COVID, there were all these inefficiencies were created. Now we're working pretty diligently to bring as much of that back as we can, as quickly as we can, because it's a balance versus with all the existing work that we're doing. But that should hopefully relieve some of that stress. I think those are sort of really the two issues that we have is, making sure that we're getting back to people quickly, making sure that we're getting them in the door quickly, and we're being responsive with the questions they have.
And thank you. And is there an expectation of the amount of time that we will respond on an email or permit issuance or anything else? Is there an expectation for our staff on how quickly we expect them to respond?
So there is, and it's something that we're working towards, and it varies by process, right? So certain applications, there are different time periods involved in sort of how long it will take us to respond to an initial inquiry. What I can say is, again, because of some of these challenges, on the sort of just straightforward customer service response to email, we have been incredibly challenged,
Yeah.
Certainly through this last 2-year period. It's something that we're working towards. I think what we hope to do, and certainly as we look at these metrics, is to just provide as much clarity and transparency and as much compassion as we can for our applicants to say, we hear you, we're working to get you a response as quickly as we can. We think we will be able to get you one in this amount of time, and then ensuring that we're following up on that. I would love to say that I have a 48-hour turnaround on every question that's asked to the department, but I just don't have the resources to respond at that level yet.
Yeah, and I'm not looking for that, and I appreciate that. What I'm thinking of is, this is one of the areas that we hear complaints about. We rarely hear compliments, which is, Councilmember Mann mentioned that a little bit, that we do hear when people are frustrated on the process. So I'm wondering how we convey the process to the residents who are calling in, because we have a variety of people calling in. As Lisa, you mentioned with the ADUs, we've got people who are doing this for the very first time. Maybe they've never even installed a new water heater, and so they don't know the whole process. And so how we deal with them is very different than how we're dealing with your major developer who knows it. They go through it every day, every week. They know all the process. They know the questions you're going to ask. So is there, in the initial email, or when someone sends an initial email, is there an automatic response, or maybe we could create one that says, this is what you can expect from us in the next stages. These are the checklist things. These are the timing issues. Doing the best to respond to you as quickly as possible. And here's how it will help us to speed up the response if you have all of these things ready for you. Do we do something like that?
We do some parts of that, not all of them, and I think it's an excellent question and one that we'll sort of take back and look more into. We have improved our automatic responses to help guide people a little bit better. We've made some efficiencies within our phone tree so people calling in get to sort of resources quicker. And then what else we'll say is, again, another sort of fairly significant project that we have underway right now is an overhaul of many of the 400 plus web pages that we have on the site, which is incredibly difficult to navigate, and there's so much information in there, sometimes it's hard to find. So our Public Information Officer, Cheryl Westling, is doing a tremendous job of really thinking through, from a customer-centric perspective, how do we get people to the right information quickly? How do we ensure that that information sets them on a path to success? And how do we sort of signpost that in a way that it is accessible to the whole community?
Right. Thank you. I really appreciate that we're thinking about that and that you're considering my recommendation and reviewing it. And the last thing I want to ask, I mean, this is a huge area and one that I know your staff is working really hard to remove the backlog and get things done, and that requires staffing. So, and you answered what the questions I had around staffing too. That's a huge issue in a lot of businesses. Everyone's sort of suffering with a lack of staffing. Shoot, Starbucks across the street closed when I was heading over to get a cup of coffee today because they didn't have enough staffing. So it's happening all over. So anything we can do to improve our staffing levels. But I had one more question, and this kind of adds to your workload. So I don't want to add to your workload. I'm just throwing it out there. When I look at the issuance, the permits, the item number 6, or actually any of these items, I wonder, this is any permit that's issued for, that's going through planning, right? So I'm getting a water heater, and it's also a remodel, and it's an ADU, and it's a major project. Is that right? How hard, and I'm not asking you to do any more work, but how hard is it when you come to our meetings that you can separate that into maybe the major projects, or say, these are the remodel, just lump them all together. These are the remodels, these are the ADUs, these are the major projects. Is that, you're looking at me like that is a big deal.
I think the response is very. And what I'll say, council member, is that the data is there. It's really the sort of extraction and curation of that data in a way that it would make it sort of useful and understandable. Right. And so as we think about changing these measures going forwards, one of the key sort of aspects of doing that is they've got to be actionable for not me as director, somewhat as Lisa as deputy director, but really for our division managers and our supervisors to look at that dashboard of that data and say, that's what's going on. I know from the conversations I'm having that spike relates to this, and it's obvious. And so that's the approach, as we're coming at it, of how do we collect this information in a way that's meaningful to us so we can manage the process and improve it for our customers. So very much with that in mind, but with the current sort of tools to actually extract that data and sort of curate it in a way that was meaningful to that level, just very, very difficult.
Thank you. And I'm not suggesting that I need to see that actually. Who needs to see that is the individuals that you said, because if they're seeing it, then they can analyze it and say, they may have a creative solution on how to speed up the process or how to move things along in a different way. So, but I understand it may be hard to get to that, but as long as we're enabling them or encouraging them to look at the data and get that information and maybe make recommendations that would speed up the process. Because ultimately, it's all about, you're a profit center for us, right? And you're a pain point for our residents sometimes because they're sitting with a new baby, they just moved into a house, and they're trying to do this remodel of their kitchen, and they can't get it done because we can't get the inspectors out there. So the faster and more creative we can come up with solutions, the better it is for everyone, because then we can cross it off our things to think about and worry about and call it a success. So thank you so much. I really appreciate the presentation from both of you. Thank you. I look forward to your next presentation in 6 months. And with that, Grace, will you poll the committee? Absolutely.
Thank you.
Sorry, I didn't see your hand.
I was listening to Councilor Claus's questions earlier. I think he focused on the key point about retention, but I did want to just ask on filling current roles, given that this is our profit center, this is the critical path to bringing the housing and jobs that we need, and given how high the vacancy rate is, have we looked at contracting with outside firms that are having expertise in proactive recruiting and trying to pull people in from other cities, other regions? Really stepping up our proactive recruitment, just given how mission critical this is.
Yeah, thanks Councilmember. You went in a slightly different, I was getting ready to answer one way, but let me pivot back for a sec. So we're working really closely with the HR department on sort of how we ensure that we're doing really sort of focused, proactive recruitments, they are bringing in outside resources to that. To the extent that they're actually specialized within our fields, I'd have to look at that a little bit more. A couple of the other things that we are proactively doing is looking at opportunities for retiree rehires, right? So we've seen a number of folks, last couple of years in particular, that have either hit their point at which it's good for them to retire or have made a life choice. Some of those folks are interested in still doing some work, just not sort of full time. So we're expanding that opportunity as best we can to ensure that we retain some of that institutional knowledge. And then on the other side of the sort of consultant piece, we do use third-party services in some of our plan check and other areas. We're actually just currently working through an RFP on those contract services that'll be coming back in end of September to council, where we can give you additional information and a much deeper briefing on that at that point.
Great, I'm glad to hear we're looking at those outside, that additional outside capacity. I guess I would just say, I think that all sounds good. This is one of the few places in government where I think it's very clearly and directly the case that spending some extra money to get to the result will actually yield more money for all of our other services. So it feels to me like it's a place where we should be really aggressive and investing in every possible strategy that gets us to the outcome, just given that it is the profit center of the city. Cool. Thank you, Chair.
Great, thank you. Let's vote.
Councilmember Perales still has his hand up as well. I'm not sure if he from before.
I'll take it down.
Okay, thank you.
Carrasco?
Aye.
Perales?
Yes.
Mahan?
Aye.
Esparza?
Yes.
And Foley?
Aye.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much. Next report is on the Parks Development Impact Fee Study. It's a status report. And I believe we have Rebecca Ross making the presentation, but John Cicerelli is here. Welcome.
Good afternoon, Chair. My name is John Cicerelli. I'm the Director of Parks, Recreation, Neighborhood Services. With me is Rebecca Ross, our Planner 4. She's going to introduce our consultant, and she's also going to go through a quick presentation to talk about an update of where we are on this study. We have no specific recommendations for you today. For those in the audience listening, this is about a fee that we collect from developers when they build new residential development. So with that said, I'll hand it over to Rebecca.
Thank you.
Thank you, John. Good afternoon, Madam Chair and Vice Chair and honorable council members. I'm Rebecca Ross with the City of San Jose's Department of Parks, Recreation, and Neighborhood Services. We're joined here today online by our consulting group that we've hired, DTA Finance, the President, David Tausig, and Senior Associate Valley Merkelin are available online if you have specific questions about some of the more technical aspects. Also online in the background, if we have some questions about some later points of the presentation, we have Zacharias Mendez. So as John said today, we are not making a recommendation, and the purpose of today's presentation is to share information, to be transparent, and to start conversations about steps forward. So the work that we've done is fairly complex, so I'm going to try and walk you through many of the components of the fee study that we're putting together. First, I will talk about the city's existing, the fee study itself. Then I'll talk about the city's existing level of service for providing parks, trails, and community centers. Third, I'll talk about how much it costs to buy, design, and construct new parks. Fourth, I will talk about how these costs form the fees that could be charged to new residential development and how these fees might be reduced. And then last, I'll let you know about steps going forward. So we're currently in the middle of, we're completing a fee study. This is a legal study that's required to change any fee structures that we have in place. This is related to what's informally called our Parks Fee Program, and that's based around a residential project's obligation to provide 3 acres of land for every 1,000 residents added to the city as a result of the new development. And when a developer does not provide land or build a park as part of their project, the developer can pay impact fees to meet this obligation. So we're currently looking at how we could restructure the fee portion of this obligation. This program provides the second highest funding that supports the creation or improvement of new and supports the creation of new parks, trails, and community centers, and also improves existing facilities. We haven't raised our fees or changed our fee schedule since 2017. And this is the first time since the program started that the city is taking a very comprehensive analysis looking at this fee structure. In addition, we received direction from this committee and from the city council to look at the potential for a commercial impact fee. We are still working, that work is still in progress, and we won't be presenting on that today. But we will be presenting later on. So now I'm going to talk about the city's existing service levels. So the city has numerous goals and policies and objectives that we're all striving to reach as a community and as a service provider. And these policies make sure, they include making sure that all community members have access to a safe and clean public space within a short distance of their house. And as our city grows and more residents move to the area, we need to add new parkland to make sure our goals for park access and acreage are met. And our goal, per our general plan, is to provide 3.5 acres of parkland for every resident. At this time, we do not meet that goal. We are currently providing over a little of 3 acres of land for every resident. If we want to maintain just the existing level of service that we have now, which is not meeting our goal, which is our existing level of service is just over a little of 3 acres of land per residence, we would need to develop 104 acres of land every year until the year 2040 to meet our goals. So the cost to buy land is expensive. So for parks, whether it's for parks, housing, or anybody, it's just as expensive for parks as it is anybody else. And the cost to buy land is all based on location, 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 location. And so we've done an initial analysis. Our consultant has done an initial analysis based on data staff has provided. And we've determined that 1 acre of land costs from the low end in Edenvale about $1.5 million. And then in the downtown central area, it costs about $8.25 million an acre. These values were done about a year ago, and we're going to be updating those land values to be more current when we have a final report. It also costs money to design and construct a park. And our program currently only uses the fees that are supposed to support the land acquisition to also buy the land or give credit for the land and also build improvements on the land. So this usually means we have smaller parks with fewer features and fewer improvements. Legally, these fees cannot be used for operations and maintenance. And so, and the impact fees that we currently have, again, are based on 2017 values. So we're not meeting the full cost that it takes to acquire land and to build a park. Therefore, under our new fee structure, we want to make sure that we include an improvement cost or consider improvement costs in addition to just purchasing or acquiring land. Staff evaluated 11 or planned construction park projects, and we're working on expanding this analysis. And construction costs are estimated to range between $1 million to $6.1 million to design and construct a park. And the costs vary depending on if it's a traditional suburban park or a smaller park or a lawn park or one with a lot of hardscape. So now I'm going to transition into how we're calculating the fees or estimating some new potential fees. We're not proposing a fee today. We're just disclosing numbers of what the fee could be based on the analysis that we have to date. So we're considering two new approaches. One is to have a citywide fee where everybody would pay one fee throughout the city, no matter where you're proposing to have your development. And the second one is to have a fee based in alignment with the city's development fee framework map. For both approaches, there are three primary components of the formula to create the fee. How much does it cost to buy land? How much does it cost to design? And how much does it cost to build? How these costs provide the same, and then how, at the end of the day, when we add up all these costs, are we going to be able to provide the same level of service today for existing residents as well as future residents? Eventually, the fee is going to be converted from a per unit fee to a square footage fee, but that work is underway and we'll report about that on a later date. So the first fee that we're proposing is the citywide fee. So if we take the average, if we average the land values across the city, and then we add in the cost to make those improvements that I already discussed, this would equal a fee of about approximately $63,000 per unit. If we determine the land values based on, consistent with the development fee framework map, and this is also the same map that the city's housing department uses to collect the inclusionary housing ordinance fees. The fee, there's a spread across the city of what those fees could look like, and with the lowest range being about $37,000 per unit in Edenvale and $92,000 per unit in downtown. Developers can apply for, under the current program, they can apply for credits that discount those, that lower the fees. And here are 4 examples of those credit programs. We are proposing to maintain our programs to lower fees for affordable housing, for existing housing units, and for qualifying treatment areas, but we are looking at changes to our private recreation program. So private recreation amenities are privately owned and maintained on-site features that are intended to have park-like or community center-like benefits. In other words, credit is provided for these amenities because they generally provide an experience like that of being in a park or a community center. Most qualifying amenities are for the sole use of residents, not the public, with the exception of a public plaza or garden. And housing developers can receive up to 50% off the total fee obligation by providing these features. Staff is considering eliminating credits for interior amenities, amenities that the public cannot access, and only giving credit for amenities that the public can access. And this would be called a privately opened park space, a POPS. And we're proposing that they would get the same amount of credit, which is 50%, up to 50% off the total obligation. And so a POPS is a privately owned and maintained space that is legally required to be accessible to the public. And you could have different recreational features within those areas, such as bocce ball, gaming tables, outdoor fitness equipment. And to further incentivize this program, in addition to getting credit for the land, the developer could also get credit for the full cost of construction, thereby elevating the quality of design and materials used. So what are the next steps? So after today, we're going to be continuing to do a series of public outreach and public engagement. We have a 15-member task force. 10 members were recommended to join the task force by a council member, and 5 members were volunteers to represent market rate residential development, as well as commercial development, as well as affordable housing, construction, and advocacy. And we've been meeting for almost a year, and they're a very smart task force, and they'll be making recommendations going forward. We've already held 2 community meetings. We've done report outs to the Parks and Recreation Commission, the Youth Commission, the Senior Commission, and the Neighborhoods Commission. And we'll continue to be reporting to all of them in addition to reporting back to this committee in November. And with that, that concludes staff report. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any members of the public with their hands raised?
There are no hands up.
Okay, thank you. Then moving to the committee, Councilmember Mahan.
Thanks, Chair. And just quickly, I appreciate the overview, really helpful to get all this context. Has the task force considered, actually, first, before I say that, let me just say I fully support the idea of eliminating the credit if it's not publicly accessible. I think it's important that we are incentivizing the right things, which would include space that is actually useful to the public. So I think that makes sense. On the other hand, has the task force considered modifying the key metric there that's very acreage focused toward looking at some other components of this that are really, I think, critical, like the quality of the park and the amenities and, you know, the play equipment and the trails and the trees and all the rest, and the intensity of use. I mean, I think it is, obviously, this is an extreme example, but you go to New York and there are a lot of people, and part of what you notice is just how intensively used the parks are. And I'm all for having more acreage, don't get me wrong. I think more park space is better. But as we have infill development and densify in urban villages, it seems to me that the quality of the park and how utilized it is and whatever we need to do to make sure they're really well utilized is maybe more important than just a sheer ratio of acres to people. So I just was wondering how much discussion there's been of that concept.
The task force has actually had a lot of discussions around some of these issues. So I need to clarify that some of those issues are policy issues that are outside of the actual fee study and what the fee would be. But we're going to be actively identifying policies such as you're bringing up that can be addressed separately from the fee study. All of the task force meetings have been recorded, and then we also have the minutes from the meetings typed out so you can read them. And I would encourage anybody to read those minutes because it has been really fascinating conversations.
If I can add, Councilmember, we also have some discretion, right? When we're collecting these fees, we're not bound to only have land or bound to only take a fee. So these are often just negotiations back and forth. And so when we look at a site, for example, downtown, we're less likely to get a lot of land. We're more likely to get them to help build a park on a smaller piece of land because land is so valuable. They really don't, their development doesn't have much land to give once the development is done. So you have to find these ways to deal with more intense areas like a downtown area. We are beginning finally to shift our thinking that really we have 2 park systems in San Jose. One is a downtown urban park system that has more intense, heavy use, and they're going to be smaller, more intensely used areas, and others are larger, more wide open, grassy spaces in the suburbs of our city. So there's really 2 different ways you approach managing and caring for and building that park system. So in that negotiation, I think you saw we can give up to 50% credit for other amenities they might provide. But in the end, we're able to try to figure out what best fits the situation that we're working with the developer.
That I think what you were describing is exactly what I'm getting at, which is that as we densify, acreage may be less feasible and maybe even less important than quality of amenities and intensity of use. And so what concerns me is that it felt like the formula and the discussion in the presentation really still revolved around this core metric of acres of park per capita. And I'm just questioning, as we densify, as we have infill, as we prioritize density within urban villages across the city, is that really still the right core metric to really drive this fee assessment off of?
One moment.
So just real quick on that. So that's the basis of which we determine sort of the value of what the developer owes. And we're using the land value as that. So the acreage per thousand is sort of that starting point, but that would ultimately be a policy change by the city council. I believe it is in the general plan as that. And so that creates the basis for this formula. But your point is well taken, and I think we're on the same page. The question is sort of how do we get there and deal with an urban intense center that's different from other parts of the city when there just isn't going to be the land available.
Okay, fair enough. And then one other question. I know there's been a lot of discussion, and it's still, as far as I understand it, fairly abstract and sort of on future work plans. But there's been discussion of a universal fee and kind of thinking holistically about fees. How does that fit in? I mean, we're doing all this work to kind of overhaul one of these fees. Are we in a position to then be flexible and kind of fit it into something more comprehensive and holistic down the road? Or is it just that's far enough out there that we don't want to wait?
We would require separate nexus studies. Each program that would be considered under a universal fee requires its own legal nexus study. So it's a very complex body of work. And so when we looked at that in the past, and I have members of the audience up here who might be able to, Jared Ferguson from the Office of Economic Development may be able to speak on the history of that a little bit. But my understanding is we've worked towards the development fee framework in lieu of a universal fee.
Hi, Councilmember Jared Ferguson, the Office of Economic Development. So we're currently working on the development fee framework, as Rebecca mentioned. So the framework itself is really a set of parameters that as we're updating each fee, they should be aligned around. So there's not necessarily one fee for each thing, but kind of a set of elements that they're all aligned around. So we've been working closely with PRNS to make sure that these changes align with those elements that we're talking about in the framework. And then in the future, our goal is to adopt a formal council policy that would memorialize the development fee framework.
Okay, so this is aligned with the work of having a more universal framework, basically.
Correct.
Yeah. Okay. Got it. I appreciate the update. I realize that's a whole other broader topic that we're not getting into now, but I just wanted to understand how this fit. Okay. Got it. Thank you, and I'll move acceptance of the report.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, great. Any other questions from my colleagues? If not, then I have a couple of questions. I know you're not bringing a request for raising fees right now, and that you mentioned that we, last time we raised it was in 2017, and I would just caution us that now may not be the time to raise fees either. We are in an economic downturn that may affect development, interest rates going up, cost of housing and development, and we certainly don't want to raise rates and cause development not to occur because of the fees that the rates that we're raising. So I know that's part of the study, and I would hope that there's feasibility that is part of that study too, to determine how it would affect development and the cost of development. I just have one question really, and it's around the citywide fee, just as an example, that what you're thinking of, and I know this is a theoretical discussion around the $63,579, but when you say per unit, do you mean residential unit? So you build 100 units of housing, it's 63,000 times that, right?
Correct.
Okay. And when you say square footage, what would that look like?
Well, we're still crunching the numbers on the formula for that. So right now, the housing department uses they have a definition of qualifying square footage that they use, and they have a methodology that they use, and we're learning from them and hoping to apply that same methodology to our fee schedule. But it's basically, if you have qualifying square footage, you just divide the fee by that qualifying square footage.
Okay, great, thank you. And I was curious about the task force and was thinking, okay, who do I have on my, who did I appoint? I can't remember who I appointed to this committee. Is it Rudy?
Correct.
Okay. I don't remember this appointment, so thank you very much. With that, I don't have any further questions. Do any of my colleagues have any questions? Doesn't look like anyone has their hands raised. So then let's move to the vote.
Carrasco? Perales?
Yes.
Mahan?
Aye.
Esparza?
Yes.
And Foley?
Aye.
Thank you.
So concludes our meeting. We do have an opportunity for open forum. Is there anyone with their hand raised?
There are no hands up.
With that, we stand adjourned. Thank you so much.